Sydney is one of the most popular cities in the Southern Hemisphere. It's home to the world-renowned Opera House, the beautiful Harbour Bridge, and if you've not been to Bondi Beach, you've almost certainly seen it on TV. Nearly 40 million people traveled through the harbour city's main airport last year, and can you blame them? The good news for Tourism Australia is that more and more people are expected to travel to and from Sydney in the coming years. The city's overall population could climb from 5 million to 7 million people. Just don't tell the current residents. All of this points to a city that's doing pretty well for itself. But there's one rather alarming catch: Sydney's airports can't cope. With the threat of serious overcrowding at the city's biggest aviation port, a big, expensive fix to the problem is currently under construction. One that's haunted political debates in Sydney since the 1940s. Say hello to Western Sydney Airport, a $5.3 billion Australian dollar, $3.6 billion United States dollars, development, with brand new terminals, check-in desks, and landing strips. While it promises 24/7 travel, this hasn't been well received by nearby residents. But with the city in desperate need of help, is this multi-billion-dollar development really the answer? And can it help rescue Sydney from its aviation nightmare? Sydney's current airport. A veteran with limitations. Sydney's current airport is a true veteran, founded in 1919. It's one of the oldest in the world, and its hangars have had more than just a lick of paint over the years. Since the 1990s, there have been several renovations. Notably, $425 million was invested to increase capacity in the lead-up to the 2000 Sydney Olympics. The existing terminals were extended and refurbished, and new rail tunnels were constructed using a tunnel boring machine. But while all of this was happening, you couldn't exactly shut down the city's key airport. The solution was the development of a steel and concrete structure that was quicker to install and meant less time on site. It also required fewer towering cranes, which are pretty difficult to use on an airport. Despite overcoming various challenges over the years, Sydney Airport does have one significant limiting factor: its location. On one side is Botany Bay, and the remainder is surrounded by housing. There's no room for expansion, and all that housing leads to flight path issues. Residents living nearby haven't been too impressed with planes flying over their homes at all hours. In fact, much like a teenager with school in the morning, the airport now has a curfew every night from 11 p.m. to 6 a.m., thanks to an act passed in 1995. The problem is that overnight flights are becoming industry standard for major operators. Without metaphorically flipping the bird to the nearby suburbs, Sydney Airport is kind of stuck between a sea and a hard place. The airport is nearing capacity, which means without help, Sydney's aviation dilemma is only going to get worse. This could potentially set up a breakdown in the humming engine behind Australia's economy. This airport moves over 500,000 metric tons of imports and exports every year, along with countless workers and businesspeople who've helped grow the Southeast Pacific into a hub for tech and business. Art investment opportunity. In fact, for the last 30-plus years, the richest Australians have been building massive generational wealth and funneling a portion of it into a growing asset class: fine art. According to a DOE estimate, last year the overall art and collectibles wealth held by ultra-high net worth individuals across the globe could hit nearly $2.9 trillion by 2026. And you can be a part of it. Using the QR code on screen, you can unlock the high-powered world of art investing, thanks to today's video sponsor, Masterworks. Their art investing platform has distributed back a total of more than $60 million in investor proceeds across their 23 exits. Right now, low prices in the art market present a rare entry opportunity. Masterworks recently posted another profitable return from selling a bizarre painting for $8 million earlier this year. With paintings typically ranging from $500,000 to $20 million, shares sometimes sell out in minutes. But since so many of the BLM subscribers have signed on, you can skip the waitlist and start investing today with the QR code on screen. the link in the description, or by heading to masterworks.io. The future of Western Sydney Airport, located around 30 miles west of the city's central business district, Sydney's new Western Sydney Airport is set to welcome a staggering 82 million passengers a year. But before that happens, construction needs to be completed. And can you believe that some of the first workers on site back in 2018 turned up purely for the food and a good time? Herds of sheep and cattle were needed to help clear the nearby 1,800 hectares of bushland, an area twice the size of Sydney Airport. This has been one of the biggest earth-moving projects in Australia's history. A total of 26 million cubic meters of soil and rock have been shifted to level the site using 300 pieces of machinery. To put that into context, the world's tallest building is the Burj Khalifa, and the amount of concrete poured for that amounted to 330,000 cubic meters. Just over 1% of the amount of ground moved for the Western Sydney site. With all that hard graft out of the way, the fun bit could begin. Contractors started laying the runway, taxiways, and apron areas. It's crucial that this infrastructure can withstand the load it's facing, with planes full of people landing and taking off here from 2026. That's why 4.5 million tons of high-quality crushed sandstone have been laid under the surface to provide a stable foundation. The runway itself is 3.7 kilometers long, and in time, a second runway of the same size will be added. It will run parallel on the other side of the terminal. You might be wondering why there's no intersecting path for a runway passing through the current landing strip. The answer is that the winds here have been studied for decades and are so predictable that they won't cause too many issues. The terminal building itself spans 4 levels, spread across 110,000 square meters. It's a bit of a unicorn, as is the whole site. Constructed from the ground up, it's the first airport built on a green site in Australia in more than 50 years. Innovative design and engineering. The roof uses light filtration inspired by the Australian bush to mimic the experience of standing underneath a eucalyptus tree canopy. The actual angles are created using a central spine, with blades spaced diagrammatically to allow natural light through the skylights above the ceiling. The outer roof is made up of 32,000 tons of fabricated steel and more than 44,000 square meters of sheet metal. Usually, this might mean a lot of joints where pesky leaks could crop up, but not here. 2 of the largest sheets of their kind in Australia, each 75 meters long, were rolled on site and hoisted up using a custom lifting frame. On top of those, the roof is topped with 6,000 solar panels to help power the terminal and surrounding infrastructure. A new metro link and future growth. You might have noticed the metro terminal link in the background of this graphic. A new 23 kilometers line is being constructed as part of a major overhaul of travel in the city. There will be 6 stops connecting Western Sydney to its new airport. Eventually, this will connect existing services stretching far and wide. All of this contributes to a city on the up, and its newest airport, which is now more than 80% complete, is part of the party. But that's just stage 1. In time, this site will see major expansion, going from this to this. The terminal building will be developed further, additional parking will be added, more space will be created for airlines to dock, and there will be that second runway. The way fuel is brought to the site is also being re-examined. As things stand, it's fed by trucks, but in the future, we could see a dedicated fuel line set up for Western Sydney. A long road ahead. This all takes time. Going full throttle and doing it all at once could risk opening a massive travel port ready for nearly 100 million people, but with demand starting at only 10 million. That would become extremely expensive. Of course, a flashy new airport of this size will never sit well with everyone. Western Sydney Airport will operate 24/7, and nearby residents have voiced concerns about the potential flight paths. There are also worries about the World Heritage status of the Blue Mountains, but the WSI team isn't too concerned about that. Those aerial routes aren't confirmed yet, so we'll have to see what happens. In the meantime, construction will continue. A plane has now landed on the runway for the first time, and further tests will continue over the next year and a half. With each passing day, we're nearing the grand opening. It's been a long and expensive journey to get here. The Batters Creek site was proposed back in 1986, but it wasn't until 28 years later that it was finally given the green light. Massive strides have been made. A first international operator, Singapore Airlines, has agreed to fly to and from WSI. After a lifetime of waiting, Sydney's hero is nearly here, the answer to its aviation nightmare.